In Korea, there is one of the strongest special forces units under number 709. Not long ago, it hosted a traditional promotion ceremony, during which everyone must fight each other until only one participant remains. However, this time only one person was able to cancel this tradition. As a result of the ceremony, all members of the unit were unable to continue serving, and the cumulative time taken to fully restore the unit was 448 weeks. After the incident, all members of the Special Forces filed a report to their commander with a request to dismiss them from service. In order to prevent the loss of so many very valuable employees, the command had to forcibly dismiss this fighter named John Kim, who had already become a legend. 3 years later, John Kim went to work as a civilian, sitting in his office trying to work when suddenly a crumpled napkin flies into his face. A department head named Jeff asks John why he considers this company an inn and dares to fall asleep on the job. John Kim asks for forgiveness and examines the napkin, trying to understand what his boss threw at him. Jeff tells John that these are tissues that he blows his nose into and orders him to throw them out for him since there is no trash can nearby. John can hardly restrain himself and does not answer his boss, but decides to throw out his emotions and grabs his smartphone. Logging into a social network, John types out a huge test about his boss, throwing napkins at him and expressing ideas about how it is necessary to create a structure that fires or transfers employees whose activities are detrimental to the company. Having properly spoken and let off steam, John exhales, wishing he could kill his boss since he was just a civilian. Suddenly, John receives a message on his phone saying that he, as a slave of a capitalist society, is given a chance. Suddenly, a red light lights up on the left temple of John's glasses, and a shiver runs down the top of his head. An augmented reality interface appears in the lenses of John's glasses, indicating that his registration is complete. A mysterious voice begins to sound in John's head, informing him that his name in the system is P099 and the first test for him is beginning. John tries to take off his strange glasses, but the glasses shoot a small cable into John's temple, warning him that if he doesn't wear his glasses for more than 60 seconds, he will be electrocuted. John is perplexed about the reasons for what is happening, remembering that the company gave him these glasses a long time ago, and there was never anything strange about them, when suddenly a woman's voice interrupts his thoughts. A colleague named Arabella approaches John, looking at him with interest and saying that he doesn't look well. John tries to tell his colleague what is happening, but a voice in his head warns him that if he says a word, he will also be electrocuted. John decides it's not worth the risk, so he says that nothing bad happened to him, to which Arabella sincerely replies that she's glad to hear it, trying to propose a date after work today. Suddenly, Jeff bursts into the conversation, asking what's going on here and that he knows a suitable bar for private meetings. He adds that John will be working late again today, so Arabella can have a nice evening just with him. According to Jeff, Arabella shouldn't pay attention to people who have to work overtime because of their incompetence. Arabella is unimpressed by her boss's offer and leaves, saying she'll probably go back to her job, leaving John and Jeff alone. John tries with all his might to restrain himself, wondering at the reasons for his boss's behavior. Suddenly, a voice in John's head tells him that the mission creation algorithm has been successfully completed and asks him to analyze the people around him. John turns his gaze to his boss, and the glasses begin scanning, showing all his personal data while he asks John questions and is angry that they are not being answered. Jeff continues to be angry, but John's attention is occupied by the glasses, which inform him that Jeff's department chief has been selected as the target of the mission. The glasses inform John that his mission is for him to order the boss to stop swearing, adding that he will be given a punishment if he fails to comply. Jeff leaves, telling John to follow him while the main character tries to figure out what the hell is going on here. The points begin the countdown to punishment as John runs his head through ideas about where the points could have come from. The mission time runs out and John is informed that his loss rate is 50%. John tries to understand what this message even means and decides to check his personal bank account. Logging into his personal account, John discovers that his account balance has been halved in a matter of seconds. John loses his temper, slamming his hands on the table and shouting that everything that is happening is a circus, but decides to calm down and goes to the roof on the orders of his boss. Walking out onto the roof with John, Jeff starts poking John with his fingers and asks him if he's gone crazy. Jeff tells John that he hates people like him, believing that the main character avoids him not because he is afraid, but because he considers him vile. John says nothing, admitting to himself that he must remain silent in this situation, since he needs this job. Suddenly, the boss's bullying is interrupted by Arabella, who sweetly asks John if he is stupid. Arabella says John must be very tired from working all day, adding that it's hard to buy a house these days, even if you're working your last legs. Arabella says that John needs to know when to tell everything in this world to hell, and shows the boss the tape recorder on which she recorded all his bullying. Jeff loses his temper and angrily asks Arabella what she is doing, trying to grab her with his hand. However, this time John decides not to stand by and intercepts the boss's hand, preventing him from grabbing his colleague. Jeff gets even angrier, demanding that John let him go immediately, cursing him even more. The glasses record Jeff's aggressive behavior and give John a new task, which requires him to hit his boss in the Adam's apple. Jeff breaks free and punches John in the face with all his might, saying that now he will put him in his place. John decides he's had enough and easily dodges, delivering a counterpunch to the boss's Adam's apple. Chief Jeff falls to the ground, and John asks Arabella to act as if nothing happened. The points tell John that the mission is complete, giving him back all the funds he lost from the previous failure. Jeff struggles to his feet, calling John names again and asking him how he dared to hit his boss. The glasses again record Jeff's behavior, giving him a new task that requires him to beat up his boss for a 5-fold reward. Jeff loses his temper again and jumps at John, about to throw a powerful punch. However, John easily dodges this amateurish attack, and quickly going behind Jeff's back, begins to choke him. After a while, Jeff passes out from lack of oxygen, and John releases him, letting him fall face first to the floor. The glasses inform John that the task has been successfully completed, and he is delighted to see that his account now contains 170 million won. John recalls recently interviewing for the job while trying to live a normal life. However, after missions started giving him points, his life changed dramatically. Having completed all the missions given to him at first, John increased his fortune to 580 million won. John goes out onto the roof to rejoice at how rich he is becoming. However, his joy is interrupted by a copter that appears out of nowhere, carrying a small case with it. The drone flies up to John and drops a black case on him, hovering in the air. John opens the case, which contains the golden ticket, while the drone informs him that his test has passed. He adds that thanks to the ticket, John is now cleared for the main mission, and now he needs to collect 1 billion won in 1 week or all his funds will be reset. John returns to his office, thinking that he still needs 420 million to complete the mission. John examines the golden ticket he received and notices on it an inscription that this ticket allows you to borrow up to 100 million per use. John thinks that, among other things, he lacks information about these glasses, after which he notices Jeff and decides to call out to him. Jeff freezes in horror at the sound of John's voice and does not react to it, continuing to stand in a stupor. John comes close to Jeff, saying that he has a question, causing Jeff to suddenly cry out in fear. John covers Jeff's mouth to stop him from shouting and asks him to calmly answer the question, after which he asks if he knows about the origin of these glasses. Jeff replies that he doesn't know anything about these glasses, adding that he has never seen another pair like this on any other employee. John tries to figure out if his boss is lying, but his thoughts are interrupted by a message about a new mission. Delighted, John quickly gets dressed, saying that he will leave work early today and cheerfully leaves. John comes to the appointed place, which is the roof of a building under construction, and looks around. The glasses inform John that the reward for completing the task is 300 million won, adding that the competition between the participants begins. Suddenly, the construction lights turn on, illuminating a case lying on a huge reel. John walks over to the case and examines it, wondering how she ended up there. Having opened the suitcase, the main character discovers that it is filled to the limit with money. The points announce the rules, which mean that the winner is the one holding the bag at the end of the timer, which is 10 minutes. Suddenly, several bandits armed with bladed weapons come out from around the corner and tell John that he shouldn't have taken the bag so quickly. John examines the opponents, asking them if they are participants like him. The bandits laugh at John, asking him if he understands the situation in which he finds himself. However, the main character just smiles madly, asking them that to win, he just needs to beat them all up. The main bandit shouts at John that he is being too arrogant and rushes to attack him. However, John, using the suitcase with money, easily blocks his attack. Laughing at the bandit's boast, John strikes the bandit with a strong palm strike. The force of the blow sends the bandit flying, destroying all fragile objects with his body. John laughs, looking at the surprised faces of the other bandits, saying that everything looks even simpler than he thought. The bandits gather their thoughts and attack John from different sides simultaneously, showing teamwork. John dodges attacks with a knife, easily placing a strong and impenetrable case under the blows. Having lost his temper from unsuccessful blows, the bandit makes a sharp lunge forward, trying to pierce John. However, John blocks the attack by holding the blade with surgical precision using a suitcase handle. Having broken the blade of the knife, John, with all his strength, lowers the heavy suitcase on the criminal's head, incapacitating him. John looks at the unconscious bandit, saying that they had misjudged their chances. The main character turns to the other bandit, telling him that he has a couple of questions. John asks him who runs the game, to which he replies that he knows nothing, adding that he simply received a bracelet and became a participant. John ponders the reasons why only his mission-issuing device is shaped like glasses, while the bandit decides to attack him, taking advantage of the opportunity. However, the bandit does not have time to do anything, because John quickly approaches him and asks him if he wants to stab him with this pathetic knife. Having not received a clear answer, John also hits the bandit with a suitcase, knocking him out. Suddenly, John hears the screams of one of the bandits, whose bracelet tells him that 300 million have been debited from him, concluding that the member is now bankrupt. The device reports that the bandit's debt has reached its maximum of 1 billion, adding that the debt collection procedure begins now. The device on the bandit's hand is activated, injecting some substance into the wearer's hand, indicating that the investigation into the case of the member of P16 has begun. The bandit's veins appear on his skin, turning purple, and in a trembling voice he begs John to help him. John is shocked by what he sees, remembering that his glasses, apparently, also have an injector that could kill him at any moment. Suddenly, two blue-skinned people wearing strange masks appear behind him, one of whom says that the participants are no different. Two bullies tie the bandit with chains and put him in a bag, saying that the participants in the game either become fabulously rich or lose everything. Left alone, John reflects that all participants, including himself, became victims of the thirst for profit, and all previous missions were just bait. Suddenly, a whole crowd of 48 people comes to the construction site and also decides to take the bag from John. The crowd surrounds John on all sides, preparing to attack, and he notices that it has somehow become too crowded. John takes a stance, preparing to attack, and tells his competitors to attack all at once. Glad that he can finally warm up, John easily distributes punches to all participants using a suitcase. When hit, 300 million won is deducted from each member, causing them to become desperate. The risk of losing such huge money due to one blow stops all participants, to which John only mockingly asks them why they do not want to attack him. The participants decide to attack from a distance, pelting John with stones and other available materials. However, John easily fights off all the objects flying at him like a suitcase, only laughing at the pitiful attempts of his opponents. As soon as the participants run out of ammunition, John makes a jump at one of the leaders, swinging his suitcase. After carrying out a crushing attack, the main character incapacitates the leader, making him bankrupt. Some participants figure that even the fine for failing a mission won't be that big, and they run away from the competition site in unison. However, the remaining participants have absolutely nothing to lose, so they take edged weapons and decide to attack John in a crowd. The masked creatures watch as John beats the participants one by one with a suitcase, multiplying the number of bankrupts. After a short period of time, John is already finishing off the last participant, noticing that his suit is torn. Having won the competition and received a prize of 300 million, John concludes that he can just buy himself a new one and leaves. A woman watches him from afar, saying that this member won't last long, turning to her mysterious colleague. The colleague tells her that he agrees with her, adding that John is attracting too much attention without realizing the danger he is in. Meanwhile, John decides to spend the night at the expensive Seagull Hotel instead of his home, where one night in a luxury room costs 20 million. The main character is happy that he can finally afford a rich life and has an amount that he previously would not have earned in 10 years. The waitstaff enters the room, telling him that she has brought him the dish he ordered. John decides to try a special top-notch steak prepared by a 3-star Michelin chef. The girl's face changes, asking John if he likes the prepared dish. John breaks into a satisfied smile, reporting that the dish is incredibly tasty. The girl takes off her disguise, revealing herself to be the one who was following him at the construction site, and says that he is a completely reckless person. John looks at the girl blankly and after an awkward pause greets her. The girl asks him why he is so careless about being a participant, wondering to himself why John is not at all surprised by what happened. John replies that he noticed them from the very beginning, so he expected them to come, pointing to the second guest in his room. The mystery man turns out to be a white-haired adult man, who is a little surprised that John would just let them get close despite knowing about them. John replies that he noticed them following him, but could tell they didn't mean to harm him, adding that he wanted some answers himself. The man says he understands John's desire to extract information from them, adding that he will ask him something himself. The trio sits down at the table and the man asks John about how he became a member. John replies that he became one after receiving the device and completing test missions, to which the man asks him where his bracelet is. John replies that there are no rules stating that the bracelet must be on the wrist, deciding to withhold information about his glasses, causing the girl to sympathize with him, assuming that he wears it on his ankle. John says it's his turn to ask questions and asks the man if he knows how to remove the device. The man replies that the price for which the organization has set freedom is 2 billion won, and until this amount is paid, it is impossible to withdraw it. John asks if the man means by organization the operators of these devices, to which he receives an affirmative answer. The man explains to John that this organization is the creators of hell and the owners of the darknet, which uses tens of billions of illegal funds to organize terrible games. According to him, not a single participant has yet managed to regain their freedom. John asks the man why he is telling him all this, to which he replies that he wants to see what kind of person John is and what is more important to him in this life. John replies that he can simply buy his freedom by earning 10 billion won and keep enough to live on until he retires. The man concludes from John's words that money is the most important thing to him, and then asks the reason why John is confident that he can always win. While waiting for an answer, the man invites John to play a little game with him, sending him an invitation through his device. John says that he is not a person who is afraid of such challenges and accepts proposals, but the analysis of his opponent makes him freeze in place. Based on the data broadcast by his scores, sitting in front of him is a rank 3 competitor named Walter Moe, who has 14 wins and only 1 loss with a net worth of 4 billion won. The glasses tell John that the game is starting, and he no longer has the opportunity to give up, to which he is only sarcastically surprised. With a slight smile, Walter Moe asks the device what kind of game he and John have in front of him. John realizes that he has messed up big time and tries to ask Walter to wait and cancel the offer. However, Walter says that it is too late and the roulette has started spinning, which will determine the random game. In roulette, there is a dice game, the rules of which state that each participant has 2 black and white dice, and the player with the highest score wins, which is either the product of the rolled values if they are the same, or the highest if they are different. The girl opens the case, saying that each chip is worth 10 million won, adding that each player will be given 88 chips. Walter adds that the white dice are thrown immediately, after which the players place bets, and then the glass is raised, on which the black dice become visible. John is surprised that this is just a game of luck, to which Walter Moe remarks that the main character is calm, which means he is confident. John calmly agrees, but in his heart he screams with indignation, remembering that his whole life is the embodiment of bad luck. Suddenly, John realizes that despite everything, he earned 880 million in 3 days, which means he is not so unlucky. After all the chips have been dealt and preparations have been completed, Walter Moe asks John if he is ready to start playing. John decides that he will turn his failure into a new opportunity and confidently rolls the white die. However, despite John's incredible self-esteem and confidence, he is given a treacherous unit. Walter also only got a 2 on the first roll, so he looks at her thoughtfully, turning over the options in his head. After weighing everything carefully, Walter bets 100 million, surprising John. Having assessed his chances and realizing that he has nowhere to retreat, John accepts Walter's bet. The girl says that since the bets have been accepted, she reveals the second dice for the participants. Walter rolls a 3, so his highest score is 3. However, John rolls another one, making him the loser of this round. John can't believe his eyes, while Walter says he didn't expect John to get paired in the first round. However, John is not giving up and says that now that he has gotten over his bad luck in the first round, he will continue to play further, expressing confidence that now everything will change. Unfortunately, confidence does not help John, and he loses over and over again without taking a single victory. After 500 million lost, the girl announces that they are moving on to the final round. After rolling the dice, Walter Moe rolls a 1 and John rolls a 6. John rejoices at the successful deal, but Walter goes all in, saying that he will give John a chance to win back and win everything. The main character is shocked by Walter's behavior, mentally reasoning about why Walter is so hopeful that he will get a 6, which in this game means an automatic victory. But realizing that during all this time, there have been no manipulations with the dice, he accepts the bet. John notes that if he had known what kind of person Walter was, he would never have sat down to play with him at the table, since Walter has a talent for absorbing luck. Walter rolls a 6, making him the automatic winner for this round and keeping John's entire fortune for himself. Walter leaves, saying that it was a fun competition, saying that they should meet again. He throws John a business card, telling him to find him if something more important than money comes into his life. The next evening, a corporate party gathers in the cafe, attended by John's colleagues. John himself gloomily sips a drink from a bottle, immersed in thoughts of lost money. A man approaches John, asking him why he looks so unwell while at the office party. The man is the president of the company where John works, named Matt Dock. However, John does not pay attention to Matt and continues to drink sullenly. Jeff jumps up, ingratiatingly trying to explain himself to the president. However, the president, smiling sweetly, tells Jeff that he sees nothing wrong and asks John to follow him. As soon as the two leave, the employees start talking to each other about John, saying that he is a little strange and talking about how they heard John went broke on some investment. Arabella listens to these conversations and expresses the hope that everything will be all right with John, to which she is told that the president of the company was nicknamed the Smiling Buddha for his benevolence. Meanwhile, Matt is on the street obscenely scolding John, holding him by the tie and saying that the main character should know his place and not spoil the corporate event with a sour face. He adds that a non-entity like John can be replaced at any time, despite the fact that he works hard. John reflects on the fact that he really has to work for freaks like Matt in order to earn pennies, but is interrupted by a slap in the face. Matt says that he will give him 100,001 for each slap, so John should be grateful to him for raising him, to which the main character restrains himself from breaking his arm, when suddenly a new task comes to him. Suddenly, John, breaking into a bright smile, cordially thanks Matt for the slaps, calling it a real life lesson. John takes the president's hand and asks him to honor him by being with him and receive more of his wisdom. The president immediately becomes kinder and tells John that he agrees, demanding to go back to the cafe, where John will pour him a drink, and they will go to the end. John smiles and agrees with the president, rereading the terms of his assignment, in which he is ordered to kidnap Matt for a huge reward. After some time, Matt Doc comes to his senses, being tied up in some garage. John tells Matt that he kidnapped him, checking the new mission conditions on his watch, from which it follows that the president needs to be locked in a certain place and held there for 24 hours. John tells the company's president, Matt, that he was dragging him around and causing all sorts of scenes. Matt demands to immediately untie him and give him the phone, but John takes it out of his pocket and clarifies if this is the phone he is talking about. John says he went through his phone and found various things, which angers Matt, who calls him a brat and demands to untie him. He continues his hysterics, screaming that John doesn't dare kidnap him and hope that nothing will happen to him for it. In response, John pokes Matt with his phone, which contains photos from a hidden camera installed in the company's women's restroom. John calls Matt a complete pervert, suggesting that he was the one who installed it, to which he only incomprehensibly asks how he was able to gain access to it. John only mocks Matt, not telling him that the intermediate reward for the kidnapping was learning how to hack devices. John tells Matt that if he turns this over to the police, very interesting things will happen. John says that he now understands why he had to kidnap Matt, when suddenly his attention is drawn to a folder with files on his phone. John dives into the contents of the folder, going through the names of the files, when he suddenly stops. John's face changes and asks Matt who he thinks the company's employees are. Matt replies that all his employees are creatures who don't know their place, and he simply gives them a chance to achieve at least something in this life. John says that despite the fact that every person has skeletons in their closet, there will be no salvation for someone like Matt. Matt smiles arrogantly, saying that John is committing crimes himself now, so his intimidation will be useless. John shuts Matt up by telling him that from now on, he will give him 100,001 for every slap, telling him to think of it as patience training. Matt loses his temper, shouting at the main character that if he dares to touch his hair, he will be in trouble. However, he doesn't have time to finish as John's slap catches up with him, easily sending him flying to the ground. John sits down next to Matt and asks him about the reasons why Matt believes that if he has money, he can live like this. John raises the president of the company, adding that even just living like everyone else is becoming very difficult, and thanks to creatures like Matt, it is becoming almost unbearable. The main character hits the company president again, saying that he wants him to feel this injustice at least once in his life. Burning with fear and frustration, Matt Doc tries to squeeze out something like an apology. However, suddenly a man bursts into the garage where John locked him, rejoicing that he has found his target. There is no trace of remorse on the president's face, and he asks the man to help him, saying that John kidnapped him. The man and his accomplice arrive, telling Matt to stay put and wait, while the device on his arm announces a new target, saying that they need to rescue Matt. They tell John that they have nothing personal against him, and this is just a mission, to which he knowingly waves his hand, saying that he has no complaints either. The participants are surprised that John is acting too calmly, suspecting that something is wrong here. However, in the blink of an eye, John closes the distance with one of the participants and incapacitates him with one blow. Without thinking twice, John grabs the next participant and knocks him out in a few seconds. John shows off quite to himself, glad that his fighting skills have not sagged at all during his civilian life. Matt watches as John cuts down groups of opponents coming one after another and thinks about how he can escape. However, suddenly John takes a knife taken from one of the defeated participants and heads towards Matt. John cuts the ropes, freeing Matt, saying that he noticed he was bored, so he came to cheer him up. After that, he takes Matt by the legs and begins to spin him around with all his might, laughing cheerfully. After spinning Matt hard enough, he throws him at one of the still-standing contestants, knocking him out. Matt Doc cannot stand the psychological stress of the resulting fear and humiliation and begins to cry, looking at John. John tells Matt to stop crying because they still have an amazing 15 hours ahead of him, during which he will help him be reborn. Another pair of participants waits behind the hangar and notes that 5 teams have already entered there. One of the partners says that this only means that they need to abandon the mission. He motivates his decision by the fact that most likely there is a terribly strange and strong person inside, with whom it is simply impossible to come to an agreement. Meanwhile, John wakes up Matt, who is passed out from stress, and says that while he was sleeping, he thought about something. According to John, since he is taking charge of Matt's moral education, it is worth discussing the issue of his salary. John says that his salary should be 5 times higher than the current one, and demands that he be changed to a position that will allow him to earn the maximum with a minimum of work. He also adds that from now on, Matt Doc will be his dog until he raises him back into a human. Meanwhile, the scene is temporarily transferred to a special security prison, which only houses dangerous prisoners. A guard approaches prisoner number 3270's cell and asks him to hold out one more day. His device shows him his new mission, which is to free a first-degree criminal within 24 hours. The prisoner of this cell, out of idleness, hits the walls with his strongest head, leaving large holes. The guard's device adds that once he successfully completes the mission, a new game will begin. The next morning, Jeff walks into the office and notices a crowd of employees. Suddenly, his face distorts into a grimace of incredible surprise and fear. In front of the employees, at a new table and chair that looks like a throne, sits John, who politely greets everyone. John says that a strange miracle happened, and by order of the president, his position suddenly changed. After everyone leaves, John thinks that because of these points, the principle of his earnings has radically changed. Thanks to the completed mission and ticket, he returned 500 million won to his account. However, his main mission, to earn 1 billion, remains unfulfilled, and there is only a little more than 28 hours left. John tells himself that it doesn't matter to him what game or mission comes next, as long as it comes soon. Meanwhile, in prison, the operator asks the guard for a report on how things are going. He is answered by a guard who says that he is on a bus with 10 especially dangerous prisoners, but there are no emergency situations. However, it turns out that the guard first cut his partner's throat so as not to leave witnesses to his atrocities. Having finished his report, he approaches the locked compartment in which the prisoners are located and opens it with the keys. He throws the keys to the handcuffs to the prisoners, telling them that they can do whatever they want, but they are unlikely to escape. He explains that when the game begins, hackers will likely take control of police CCTV cameras. The guard concludes that in any case, no one will be able to escape from prison. Meanwhile, all device owners receive a task that requires them to hunt escaped prisoners. The prisoners are released, along with the leader number 3270, whose reward is 500 million. The other prisoners call him Hyungnim and ask him what they will all do. Hyungnim offers to find the money that one of his friends buried on the prison grounds, after which they will all get out of Korea. Participants receive the geolocation of prisoners, and they wonder where these prisoners are trying to get to. One of the hunters finishes his preparations and orders the others to move out. Otherwise, they will not have time to catch enough victims. 4 hours after the start of the penalty game, one of the squads arrived at the location of the prisoners and began catching the criminals. The catcher laughs at the victim, saying that for a criminal, his victim is rather weak and should have lived a righteous life. The catcher feels his friend's hand on his shoulder and turns around, saying that as long as they catch everyone one by one, the observers will not notice anything. However, the hand lying on the catcher's shoulder is only the severed limb of his former friend, which was cut off by prisoner number 2804. The prisoner says that he also catches people, specifying that his targets are freaks with red watches. The catcher tries to say something to the prisoner, but he quickly cuts off his hand and then finishes him off. Prisoner 2804 returns to Hyungnim, saying that he has dealt with the local pests and throws his severed hands on the ground. 2804 asks Hyungnim how many people are involved as he places his hands on the captive's head. Hyungnim replies that he quickly got tired of killing hunters, so he stopped counting, after which he breaks the prisoner's neck. He turns around at the mountain of corpses and says that he hasn't had so much fun for a long time. After that, he approaches the rest of the prisoners who are digging the ground in search of money and says that they should dig faster. Otherwise, he will abandon those who do not find anything. Prisoner 2804 tells Hyungnim that after checking the dead members, He was unable to figure out which gang they belonged to, but he found out that there was a bounty on their heads, and their location was revealed. Hyungnim asks prisoner 2804 how much they are giving for him, and upon receiving the answer he is happy, saying that it is always a dream to receive a reward on your head. Not understanding Hyungnim's joy, 2804 asks his accomplice how much money they have already found. The prisoner replies that they found 3 bundles of 500 million each, and there are 3 more left. Prisoner 2804 mentally reflects that this is much more than he imagined, believing that he should just use Hyungnim and escape. Meanwhile, another pair of participants is watching them, surprised by their behavior. They then notice a pile of dead members unearthed, realizing that the prisoners are much more dangerous than they initially thought. The participants decide not to retreat and play big, but one of them questions the correctness of their action, saying that hunting people like cattle is strange. However, his thoughts are interrupted by his accomplice, who grabbed him by the jacket and said that they are not even hunting people, but monsters. The leader of the participants suggests catching them from a distance, as this is the safest method, adding that under no circumstances should they be allowed to escape. Suddenly, John's voice is heard behind him, saying that they really can't let the prisoners escape. John emerges from the bushes to meet the frightened participants, saying that there is no point in being on guard all the time. Jonah says that he is just an office worker, causing confusion in the eyes of the participants. However, John says that he has a great plan and will share it if they are interested. After John talks about his plan, bewilderment and misunderstanding freeze on the faces of the participants. The leader of the hunters points a crossbow at John and asks him why he thought they should be bait, adding that they are not some kind of weaklings. He warns that if John doesn't run away on the count of 3, he will shoot him, to which John calmly retorts that he suggested the best way for everyone. The leader shoots at John, but he easily deflects the arrow with a precise blow from his machete. Having caught a piece of the arrow with his hand, John says that the leader should not have warned him about exactly when he would shoot. John invites the participants to listen to him while he is still kind, and they agree unquestioningly. After some time, the participants approach the prisoners, who are looking for the last remaining bundles of money. The prisoners laugh because the participants came to them with bare hands and express a desire to bury them right here. After waiting until all the prisoners see them, the participants take to their heels. Prisoner 2804 orders everyone to catch the escapee, and they give chase. The participants run away from the prisoners and replay John's plan in their heads, according to which they need to lure them to the specified location. A squad of hunters arrives at the indicated place, but prisoners immediately come running after them. The prisoners surround the hunters, complaining that there are no holes in which to bury them. One of the prisoners runs at the leader of the hunters, swinging a shovel to finish him off with one blow. However, at the last moment, a well-aimed throw from an axe disrupts the blow, knocking the shovel out of the prisoner's hands. John lights the twigs and throws them into the grass surrounding the house, creating a ring of flames. When asked by the prisoners who he is, he replies that all they need to know is that none of them will escape from here. John adds that it will be easier for them if they stand still and just let them get beaten up, adding that they should all shell out the money. The prisoners begin to panic, but the leader of them picks up a shovel, telling them not to be afraid, because there is only one John. However, as soon as he finishes this, John knocks him out with a powerful kick, forcing him to roll far on the ground. John lands on his feet, telling the prisoners that they can now panic, after which they lash out in rage. Nevertheless, John easily knocks out and disarms the attackers. John knocks the knife out of the hand of one of the attackers with a strong blow, after which he picks it up and inflicts several well-aimed blows on him. The prisoner bleeds and collapses, leaving the last survivor alone with John. Without wasting a second to think, John lunges at the last prisoner and quickly knocks him out cold by slamming him into the ground. The hunters watch with undisguised surprise as John single-handedly defeated an entire squad of enemies. According to the leader in a game where his own life is at stake, this man is a real hunter. John rejoices at the 400 million won reward he has received, while prisoner 2804 arrives at the battle site, asking who is playing with fire here. The prisoner pulls a knife on John, who is told that account 2804 has 18 charges, including murder, arson, and kidnapping, adding that the reward for it is 300 million. John asks 2804 if he is going to avenge his comrades. Prisoner 2804 says that he came to tell John that he would finish the job if he started it, after which he finishes off his accomplice with a knife. The prisoner calls John an amateur and asks if he is ready to get some new holes in his body, to which he agrees. The prisoner attacks John, trying to stab him, but John easily dodges him. However, 2804's pressure does not slow down, and he continues to throw blow after blow with both hands, yet never hits John. Realizing that in front of him is a formidable opponent, who, on top of everything, is also ambidextrous, John stops abruptly and asks him to wait 1 second. John quickly moves back a little, beginning to rummage through various gardening supplies. John takes out his twin hose and takes a mantis stance, saying that it's been a while since he's practiced with them. The prisoner recalls how everyone mocked him earlier, but everything changed as soon as he took out a knife. According to him, even those who threatened to beat him begged for forgiveness. He only had to cut them a few times. He notes that he had a lot of fun watching people fear him and grovel before him. However, now, under John's pressure, the prisoner for the first time could not understand what to do. Prisoner 2804 anxiously wonders if John is pushing him into a corner. He loses his temper, swinging wide, trying to hit John, but he easily dodges it. John continues to laugh at him, unbalancing him, causing him to make more and more mistakes. The prisoner completely lets his guard down and goes on the attack, telling John that he has no right to humiliate him. However, John makes a lightning-fast dash, delivering several dozen blows per second to the prisoner, incapacitating him. John turns to the prisoner, telling him that those who do not know their place cannot be strong. After some time, John happily walks with his partners, singing a song about how joyful they will be in searching for 500 million. Confused by the strange songs, the leader of the hunters embarrassedly asks John if they can leave already. John incomprehensibly asks the others why they are going to leave if there is still one left, to which they answer that the last criminal is a very dangerous person who has killed 13 people with his bare hands. Suddenly, Hyungnim appears like a huge rock behind them, leaving everyone except John in shock and awe. Hyungnim suggests skipping the introductions and lands a powerful blow on John. However, John blocks the blow and counters with an uppercut straight to Hyungnim's jaw. Hyungnim and John stop briefly and are surprised that they took each other's blows. The main character and Hyungnim suspect that the next battle will be very interesting. John tries to overpower Hyungnim with his speed while dodging his attacks. Hyungnim, meanwhile, doesn't take much damage from John's attacks thanks to the strength of his head. The prisoner decides that the best option would be to try to capture John, and he tries to catch the nimble fighter in his mistake. After a few seconds, he sees the moment and rushes forward at John, grabbing him. After Hyungnim grabs John, he squeezes him hard, trying to break his bones. Hyungnim asks John if he understands that the cap will soon come to him and squeezes him further. However, in a stressful situation, John gets a second wind, pumping his body with endorphins and adrenaline. Gathering all his will and new strength, John grabs Hyungnim's face and forces him to release his grip. John tells him that he has held back his powers for a long time, but since he is facing a strong opponent, he can no longer hold back. He then forcefully slams Hyungnim's head into the ground, causing a crushing blow. After knocking out Hyungnim, John receives the final reward of 500 million won, and the hunt for the criminals is declared over. The hunters watch in horror as John defeats such a powerful category and cannot believe their eyes. One of them in a whisper offers to secretly take away the money buried by the prisoners, which John does not yet know about. The hunters approach John and say that they will go clean up the hunting area. John is not against this situation when suddenly a dart flies into his neck. A split second later, the darts also hit the hunters, and they recoil to the sides. Realizing that it is a paralytic poison, John tries to scan the attackers by scanning the area with his eyes. A man wearing a white mask with the Omega symbol comes out of the forest, and an attempt to scan him returns the result that access is denied. Omega is also surrounded by henchmen who look like debt collectors from a construction site. John tries to ask Omega who he is, but the poison begins to take effect and his eyes slowly close. Unable to resist the power of the poison, John falls unconscious to the ground. John finds himself in a burning building that looks like a correctional facility. John tries to get out of the burning building, but suddenly hears strange voices asking him questions. John turns around and sees dead children looking at him through the bars and asking him why he ran away alone. John suddenly jumps up and finds himself lying on his bed in his apartment. The main character remembers everything that happened, and the face of the defeated Hyungnim and that Omega mask pop up in his head. John listens to the TV, which is broadcasting news that a fire has occurred on a convoy bus for prisoners sentenced to death. John checks his balance and mission status and confirms that his balance is $1.7 billion. John exhales, placing a hand on his neck, believing that everything ended without problems. Suddenly, he feels a strange device on his neck that looks like a small bomb. John is given a new mission, according to which he needs to complete 5 consecutive tasks, the first of which is to establish contact with employee A. On a sunny morning, Jeff stands near his place of work and drinks coffee, complaining that he is tired of buying it himself every day. Suddenly, he notices John rushing at top speed, who only manages to shout to Jeff to get out of the way. John runs past Jeff, knocking the coffee cup out of his hand and rushing to the upper floors of the building. Arabella sits at her workplace and deals with her tasks by reading reports. Suddenly, John's face, out of breath and distorted by a slight touch of madness, appears in front of her face and greets her. Arabella jumps up from her workplace in surprise, carefully examining John. Having calmed down a little, she asks John what happened and why he was so out of breath, to which John replies that he has a very important task. Arabella asks John if this task is related to her, while he is given a mission according to which he needs to spend 6 hours next to Arabella. John says that he recently changed positions and jobs, adding that she probably needs a break from excessive work. The main character concludes that today, Arabella can have a good rest and talk with him, and assistant Jeff will do everything for her. John notices Jeff and looks at him madly, asking him if he will help Arabella out. Jeff, scared to death, salutes, saying that he will do everything without any problems. John adds that he will pay for his vacation expenses with the card he received from his boss, keeping silent about the fact that he actually stole it. Arabella is happy about this situation, asking if she can take a vacation at any time, to which John replies that for this, she needs to be near him. Arabella and John are having a great day doing various activities, such as going to the cinema, having a picnic or bowling, and John thinks that this is very similar to a date. John and Arabella finish their day at the restaurant, and she tells him that she had a lot of fun today. Arabella apologizes for being noisy, admitting that she is starting to get more and more tired from working too much. She says that she is still very grateful to John for everything and says that she wants to confess something to him. Looking up at John, she sees that he has inserted 2 forks into his mouth, saying that he is a mustachioed walrus. Arabella laughs heartily, asking John if he was as drunk as she was. John is on a mission to make Arabella laugh and is glad that she is a little tipsy. Otherwise, it would have been much more difficult. The waiter approaches them and brings them a plate covered with a lid, saying that their last dish is ready. He thanks John and Arabella for visiting the restaurant, saying that he prepared them a small gift, removing the lid and showing John that the members' very same watches are inside. Arabella looks at the device, mistaking it for a smart watch, and John receives a task to get Arabella to join the game and put the device on her. Arabella happily asks if they are getting a watch, while John moves closer to the waiter and asks him who he is. The butler looks lifelessly at John, and he realizes that someone is clearly controlling him. Arabella looks at John a little confusedly, asking him if everything is okay. John is lost in thought, realizing that he was mistaken in thinking that he could always win, because he did not imagine that such dilemmas would be put before him. John decides not to tell Arabella and tells her that nothing serious happened, adding that he will walk her home. Arriving at her home, Arabella peacefully falls asleep, and John looks at her, realizing that she is defenseless and it costs him nothing to put the device on her. John tells himself that all he believes in this world is money, adding that her life is much less important than his own, but he still cannot decide on such meanness. Suddenly, Omega contacts John through the glasses, telling him that no one will know about his action. He adds that a person does everything to survive, so John should not worry. According to Omega, John is special, but ultimately just one of the members, and the members are very easy to control, since man is the most selfish animal. John mockingly asks Omega if he really thinks he knows everything about him, adding that he thinks he has no idea who John is. John tells Omega that he failed him, explaining that when he is failed, he turns everything upside down. Omega asks John if he is sure that he is capable of this, to which the main character takes a knife and rips the bomb out of his neck. John tells Omega that they thought they could control him with money, but in reality, he was the one using it. Omega wonders how far John can go, calling several drones to the area where John is located. The drones set fire to the villa across from John, and Omega informs him that there are 5 people in it. Omega tells John that he must save the unfortunate people from this fire, but there is a catch. John receives a new task to kill Arabella with a significant reward of 300 million won. The same task, along with Arabella's location, comes to several other participants. Omega poses a dilemma for John: saving strangers from a fire or saving his colleague, who has become the target of the participants. John prudently decides to call the fire department and takes out his smartphone. Omega, having connected to him, reports that this, of course, is prohibited, saying that he has taken control of all systems, telling John that he needs to choose one of 2. John quickly evaluates his options and starts yelling at the top of his lungs that there is a fire in the house, waking up all the residents. All the residents of the house wake up and run outside, and with them the peacefully sleeping Arabella comes to her senses. John quickly throws a thick cloth over Arabella to prevent her from getting burned. Having wrapped Arabella up, John throws her over his shoulder and carries her out of the building and onto the street. John sets her down, saying that, unfortunately, he didn't bring his work phone. John asks Arabella to cover herself with a blanket and wait here, saying that he will be back soon. Arabella anxiously asks John where he is going, expressing the hope that he will not return to the scene of the fire. John hesitates a little and tells her that when he was a child, there was a fire in the place where he lived. Based on John's words, he was weak and very scared at the time, so he couldn't do anything. After that day, John decided that he would never leave an innocent person in trouble. John walks into a burning building and Arabella watches him with concern, while onlookers wonder why he went there. After a few seconds, people take out their phones and start filming the burning building with all their might. John emerges from the smoke a few minutes later, pulling 4 people out of the fire. Arabella lays out her blanket and John places the survivors on it, asking for help as he returns to the burning building. John is informed that the participant is approaching Arabella and will be within a radius of 5 meters in a minute. John decides that he will have time to save everyone and accelerates into the building. Having found the last apartment with a survivor, he immediately flies into it, approaching the unfortunate man. However, Omega contacts John again, saying that if he saves this man, he will write off $1 billion from his account, and if he leaves him to die, then he will add it on the contrary. Omega asks John what he will do while the main character stands over the survivor with a grim look. Arabella stands by the burning building and holds her hands in excitement, asking herself why John doesn't come out. Suddenly, a man approaches her and asks her if she lives in apartment 204 in Haru Villa. Arabella is surprised by this question and asks the stranger if he knows her, to which she receives an affirmative answer. The stranger grabs Arabella by the arm and pulls out a knife, ordering her to shut up and follow him. He adds that she better be a good girl when something heavy lands on the car behind him. The smoke clears and John appears in front of Arabella and the party, who tells the stranger that he will kill him if he touches Arabella. The member asks John if he is the same as him, suspecting that he wants to steal his money. The participant shouts that this money will belong to him and pulls Arabella onto his knife. However, John throws his boot well and deflects the blow on Arabella. From overwhelming horror and stress, Arabella falls to her knees, unable to move. The stranger makes a second attempt to kill Arabella and makes a strong thrust with a knife. However, John manages to cover Arabella with himself in time, taking the blow of the knife. He repeats the words that he will kill him if he lays even a finger on Arabella. John decides not to stand on ceremony and makes a powerful headbutt on the stranger, knocking him out. The main character rejoices at the victory, but immediately realizes that he has inhaled carbon monoxide and his strength is beginning to leave him. John falls unconscious on the asphalt, and Arabella, having recovered from the shock, approaches him. She sits down next to him and asks him to wake up as a mysterious figure approaches our heroes. A level 31 participant named Gyllenhaal speaks on the phone and reports that he has found an object, asking whether to take it with him or get rid of it. John is awakened from a heavy sleep by the loud cries of a child for help. John quickly jumps up, trying to understand what is happening and where he is. John notices that he is in a small room in which a tall man is approaching a child menacingly. A child screams for help, and a man demands that he shut up and be a good girl. In the blink of an eye, John catches up with the man and jumps on him, about to punch him in the face. However, despite the precision and speed of the blow, the man manages to intercept it and block it. He asks John why he strikes so suddenly, to which John responds by ordering him to move away from the child. They are interrupted by Walter sitting quietly in the room, holding a gun. Walter reports that with ill-considered actions, they are digging their own grave. John notices that the child is shaking with fear and has a bracelet on his wrist. John calls Walter and the man bastards and demands to let him go, to which they answer him that it is none of his business. Walter says that John appeared from nowhere and saves an unfamiliar child, asking him why he is doing this. John says that the child was asking for help and adds that Walter and his accomplice are very similar to the criminals. Walter grins at this characterization and says that they will commit crimes by raising a gun. John quickly covers the child with himself, hoping that the bullet will not pierce through him. Walter doesn't hesitate to pull the trigger, but the gun shoots out a stream of water. John tries to figure out what the hell is going on here, and the kid behind him starts laughing heartily. The child tells John that he fell for his game, and he grabs him with both hands. Angry at being manipulated, John asks the child if he is a bully. John begins to quickly spin the child back and forth, causing him to scream for help again. The man tells Walter that John is not so bad, to which he readily agrees. Walter apologizes for the deception, saying that it was a kind of test, adding that they have custody of this child. Walter says that they are a liberation group for game participants, adding that he will be brief as it would take too long to fully explain. He says that his colleague, who was with him yesterday, is safely in the hospital, but due to severe shock, she does not remember what happened. Walter shows John a selfie of his assistant, who is guarding Arabella's safety at the hospital. He also points to the man, saying that it was he who saved John and Arabella, introducing him as Gyllenhaal. John thanks Walter for saving him, adding that it was unlikely that it was done just like that. Walter tells John that he has become a ranker, and his fortune will soon exceed $2 billion. He adds that if he earns more and levels up, other forces or rankers may target him. Walter adds that in this case, a repetition of the tests is guaranteed, which he cannot cope with alone, like yesterday. John agrees with this, mentally worrying that Arabella was in danger because of him, realizing that if this happens again, luck may not be so favorable to him. Walter tells John that he should join our group and transfer 800 million, which will later be returned to his account. He explains that this is to ensure that they are pursuing a common goal. John calls Walter a fraud, to which he responds with a mocking denial, adding that first John needs to complete a command mission with one of the members of their group, after which the first half will be returned to his account. Walter says that John will receive the rest of the money later, clarifying that the main character was not going to leave the game anyway, and this proposal is not a losing proposition. Sometime later, John sits at the bar and ponders Walter's proposal. John decides to check his account and notices that he has not received rewards for completed missions. The reward is a coupon for a random item, and John decides to check his phone, in which he notices a message from Omega, informing him that he will not have personal missions for a while. John understands that in this system, his entire fortune can disappear at any moment, and it is almost impossible to cash out this money, so he needs to enjoy it while he can. John buys himself a 400,001 lunch and enjoys the omakase he previously could only drool over. The main character is filled with satisfaction, admitting to himself that they taste exactly the way he imagined them. John remembers how he once lived in poverty and very much desired a rich life, promising himself that now he would enjoy it to the fullest. After 4 days, John decides to conduct a team mission and comes to the test site, inspecting the participants. John is immersed in thoughts about the need to look for a good apartment for himself after he finishes here, when suddenly he hears a reproach for being late. John suspects that his playing partner said this and turns his head, discovering that his partner is the same boy. John sadly asks the boy how old he is, to which he admits that he is only 15. The rest of the participants mockingly look at this scene, saying that when the game starts, they will need to focus on this couple. John mentally rages that he was deceived, admitting that he expected Gyllenhaal to be present instead of the schoolboy. The child makes fun of John, saying that he doesn't look very strong, adding that John is also scary. John tells the boy that he doesn't like him either, to which he timidly admits that he must win this game at all costs. John exhales and puts his hand on the boy's head, telling him to trust him, adding that he can definitely protect one baby. After some time, the participants go out into the field and wait for the command to start the game. Through a loudspeaker on the pole, it is announced that the game will be King Defense, in which a random king is selected from each pair, which must be defended at all costs until there are no 2 pairs of participants left. John looks back at the boy and he shows him that he has become king. The heroes are surrounded by other participants and are preparing for when the countdown ends. As soon as the countdown ends, one of the pairs of participants rushes at the child. John manages to quickly grab the schoolboy and sit him on his neck, making it easier for himself to control the king. The members praise John for his speed, adding that he has just revealed to everyone that the boy is the king. One of the participants adds that if he fights alone, he will quickly die. The boy is frightened by the threats and digs his hands into John's hair, causing him to cower in pain. The child begins to panic and ask what they should do, to which John shouts and asks him to sit up straight and not disturb him. One of the participants decides to end it by preparing to attack John and the child. Suddenly, he notices that the 2 green-haired participants are watching what is happening indifferently and making no attempt to attack John. A couple of participants realize that they want to stab them in the back and approaches them, saying that this will not work, adding that they must first eliminate John and the little one. The child touches John's face, telling him that they have been distracted, to which he replies that he sees it himself. Meanwhile, another pair of participants carefully sneaks up behind John. John asks the child to shift his support to both legs and stand up, to which he asks why this is necessary. Suddenly, participants attack them from both sides, trying to catch the child on John's neck. John throws the child up, after which he jumps up, kicking 2 attackers at the same time. John knocks out the participants with one blow and decides to show off by theatrically catching a falling child. John puts the kid down, saying he'll deal with the others and come back. The child is trying to understand what kind of person John is, while he turns around at the loud cry of one of the participants. One of the green-haired participants brought his opponent to his knees and crushed his eyes with his fingers. In response to pleas not to do this, he only coolly admits that he is having fun with it, so he will not stop. After gouging out his opponent's eyes, the green-haired contestant shakes his hand off and hears the other opponent's screams. His accomplice, unlike his eyes, decided to bite off his opponent's nose. After hearing enough screams of pain, he knees his opponent in the face, knocking him out. John and the child are surprised that complete psychos remain against them. The loudspeaker announces that the first game has been successfully completed, adding that the second game begins in 10 minutes in the gym nearby. Participants come to the gym and prepare for a new challenge. John asks the child the reason why he is so eager to participate in this game, to which he replies that he must win. Suddenly, a stranger enters the hall, saying that he has been entrusted with conducting the second game. A man wearing a strange mask on his face comes into the light and introduces himself as a puppet. He slowly walks to the center of the room, congratulating the winners of the first game and emphasizing that he thought it would take longer. The host decides to get straight to the point and announces the start of the second game. The second game is a one-touch random card challenge. The puppet announces the rules of the game, which state that each turn the team receives one card with a body part that needs to be hit by the opponent and one card with a body part that needs to be hit. The host adds that the king can order his partner, adding that if the king's orders are not followed, the participant is immediately recognized as a violator and expelled. John thinks the rules are too harsh and tries to stop the game, but the boy stops him. The boy says that he is still the king, so they cannot stop. John asks the child if he is going to order him to take the hits for himself. The child, with a heavy heart, says that if this helps him win, then he will do that too. John raises his hand to the child and he cowers and closes his eyes in fear. John says he doesn't know what motivates the child, asking why the child's face looks like his world has collapsed. The child remembers his sister, who calls him by name Charles and says that she is fine. In his memories, his sister hugs him, asking him if he was hurt. The sister says she found a job that will allow her to pay off her debts in 2 years and protect him. Charles concludes that his sister never returned, so he must find her. John replies that Charles does not have to order him, because adults should always protect children. According to the rules of the game, anyone can be an attacker and a defender, and you can change places at any time. The game begins, and the first cards for the attacking team are the fist, and for the defensive team, the upper body. The attacker hits John with a powerful blow, causing significant damage to internal organs. John grabs the liver, noting that his opponent definitely knows where to hit. The roles are reversed, and John gets the eye attack card, and the defender gets the ear defense card, causing John to decide to miss his attack. At the next change of roles based on the cards, the attacker hits John in the forehead with his elbow. In the following series of role changes, John never got a card that allowed him to make an attack, so he missed his attacks one by one. John barely keeps control of himself from the injustice and hopes that he will have the opportunity to hit his opponent at least once. The green-haired king approaches the attacker and asks him if he is hitting him properly, changing roles with him. John realizes that his body is slowly starting to fail, noting that in addition to everything, his wounds have opened up. Suddenly, Charles says that he too is switching places with John, causing him to be shocked. Charles replies that he is going to check something and asks John to trust him. The attacker looks at Charles, asking him about the fact that he apparently hasn't been beaten yet. As soon as the round begins, he lands a powerful knee strike to Charles's chest. Charles, in severe pain, cannot restrain the urge to vomit and empties his stomach while the leader opens the strike area for the second team. According to the cards, Charles's team must strike the forehead with the middle finger. Charles is indignant at such a failure, but John says that they are finally lucky and approaches his opponent. John delivers a powerful crack that causes the enemy to recoil, blood spraying from both nostrils. The main character falls into ecstasy from the realization that he was finally able to hit his hated opponents. The opponent is trying to come to his senses and does not believe that he was hit with such force with one finger. The next card for the green-haired team is unlucky, so it misses its turn. The flow of the game changes and John gets normal cards, which he uses with great pleasure, knocking the spirit out of his opponent. The green team defender asks his ally to switch places with him. However, he orders him to continue taking attacks, saying that he will only attack. Charles understands and prepares himself for the fact that the next attack card may be successful for the enemy team and prepares to withstand it at any cost. The opposing team gets kicked in the stomach and a crushing force hits Charles. However, gathering all his determination into a fist, he rises to his feet and remains conscious. The green-haired team's defender yells at Charles, demanding that he give up already so that he doesn't get hit anymore. John gets punched in the nose and thanks Lady Luck for the chance. Swinging with all his might, he hits the defender, causing him to fly back at high speed. The defender slams into the king, allowing John to knock out two with one blow. John looks at the two unconscious opponents and asks the host if he broke the rules. The presenter, however, calmly replies that he does not see any problems here. Charles congratulates John on his victory, not believing that they actually won. Charles explains that according to his idea, the effectiveness of attack cards depends on how many hits the king took. John praises Charles for his ingenuity, saying that he was brilliant anyway. However, Charles suddenly changes his face, saying that apparently the game is not over yet, noting that they have not received any reward. The host announces the last game called Uprising and Suppression. According to the rules, the last two players are no longer a team and play the individual roles of king and villager, the goals of which are to defeat or force the opponent to surrender. Charles does not believe that they will have to kill each other and says that there must be another way. However, John interrupts his reasoning by giving him a strong slap in the face. He tells Charles to stop talking like a weakling and accept the reality that he will have to fight him. John adds that, among other things, he is a very bad person. Charles understands that this is an initially unequal battle in which he would not win even if armed, but he will not have any other chances. John teases Charles, saying that his sister was not so dear to him if he behaves so insecurely. Charles does not understand what John means, to which the protagonist reminds him that he said that he would save his sister, but now his true intentions are visible. John adds that his sister is probably still having a hard time coping with everything that falls on her for his sake, but he is still in no hurry to help her. John suggests that his sister may already be dead, to which Charles screams at him in tears and throws his fists at him. John easily dodges Charles's attack, saying that he is too proud to fight a child. The main character tells the child that if Charles can hit him once, he will give up. Charles rushes to attack, and John mentally argues that the current world is a cruel place. John trips Charles up by continuing to think that desire or desperation alone will not achieve anything. From the point of view of the main character, the only thing that can save dear people or himself is power or money. John concludes that power and money can either be the fruit of labor or the result of desperation. Charles rushes at John again and manages to land one blow on him. John smiles at Charles and tells the host that he is giving up. The presenter reports that the resident has given up, announcing Charles as the winner. After some time in a safe place, Gyllenhaal tends to Charles's wounds. Gyllenhaal asks Charles how much money he received as a reward, to which he replies that his prize was 700 million. John lost 200 million won, so he is not in the best mood. Walter asks John if he lost the last game on purpose, to which he does not give a specific answer. Walter thanks John for his actions, saying that thanks to him he will soon be free. John asks Walter if Charles is buying his freedom for this, to which Walter replies that he already had the money for it, but he was given an additional condition. Based on this condition, Charles had to take first place in this game, or he would not see freedom. Walter concludes that in the end, Charles earned 700 million in freedom, but this is all some kind of terrible joke, since someone must undergo additional tests, and someone gains freedom immediately. According to him, in the end, everything is in the hands of the organizer, who has incredible hacking abilities that can paralyze the entire national system. However, according to Walter, John should never forget that today he saved someone from this hell. He also asks John how to give him 400 million, offering several options, including transfer to an account, cash, or a gold bar. John begins to salivate, thinking that the gold bars could be the same as in the TV series and movies. Walter places in front of him 5 shining gold bars of 80 million each. John is over the moon, happy that the gold looks much better than he imagined. Gyllenhaal tells Charles that John loves money too much, to which he says that he thinks he's cool. However, as Charles notes, sometimes John behaves a little too strangely. John turns to Charles and tells him that he is a great fellow. He adds that if they don't help him find his sister, he can call, and John will definitely help him. After a while, Gyllenhaal leads Charles away, and John follows them with his gaze, waving his hand to the boy. Walter asks John again if he would like to join them, to which he replies that he is still greedy for money. Walter chuckles and leaves, saying that someday he will still come to us, and then they will talk again. And John wishes him luck, looking after him. 6 days later, John drives an expensive car to a luxury hotel. During this time, John managed to change his suit and image, flashing an expensive watch. John sits down at the bar, enjoying some nice jazz and thinking about the fact that he still has 1.4 billion won left in his account. According to John's calculations, the value of the gold is 400 million won, and the value of the car and watch stolen from the boss is another 300 million. Thus, John realizes that his total wealth is about 2.1 billion won. However, his thoughts are interrupted by a beautiful girl whom he met a couple of days ago. John reflects on the fact that she is the first person from high society he has met, but their interaction turned out much better than I thought. The main character notes that in addition to being interested in culture and sociability, he was very attracted by her sincere smile. The girl looks at him, smiling sweetly, and asks him why he does not succumb to her temptations. John nervously turns to her and asks her what she meant, to which she just smiles, believing that he simply did not understand her. The girl grabs John's tie and moves a little closer to him, saying that she is too drunk to walk home alone. Without resisting requests to take her home, John walks with her and is amazed at the luxury of the local buildings. He looks at the house, realizing that one apartment costs at least $1 billion, and asks her if she lives in it, to which she receives an affirmative answer. Suddenly, heavy rain falls on the couple, leaving them soaked to the skin. The girl takes John by the sleeve, saying that he can stay with her until the rain stops. A few minutes later, John unexpectedly finds himself lying on a soft bed. His companion playfully climbs on him, to which John tells her that she is a little drunk. The girl looks at him, after which she giggles and says that she is absolutely sober and asks him to take off his glasses. John grabs the girl's hand and moves the girl onto the bed, leaning over her. The girl looks at him with slight surprise, after which she breaks into a smile, saying that she did not expect such pressure from him. John examines his companion and asks her to stop fooling around. The girl, however, closes her eyes and whispers, asking him to forget about everything, starting to cry quietly, after which she quickly falls asleep. After that day, this girl started calling John often, and he really became interested in her. John admits to himself that he used to go to work to re-educate his boss, watching all sorts of nonsense at work and not doing much of anything. However, now after work, he began to often go on dates with this girl. John truly believes that this time was truly amazing. However, as John saw more of her, he continued to find more and more reasons why they should move away. John decides that tonight will be his last, but his date suddenly proposes a relationship. Although shocked by these words, John refuses with sadness in his heart. His companion does not understand why he refuses the proposal of a beautiful, attractive, and rich girl, but John privately believes that because of him, she could get into trouble. John thanks her for all the time they spent together and leaves, sadly thinking that with him, the life of this beautiful girl will turn into hell. Suddenly, he hears the painfully familiar sound of that same device behind him. John turns around and sees his companion's choker telling him that her mission has failed. According to the device, she was given the task of staying in a relationship with John for 10 days and remaining unnoticed. The girl looks at John, saying that she is a special player just like him. She asks John if he is shocked that he is not one of a kind, suggesting that he is still a newbie. The device gives the girl the next mission, which is to kill John. John has time to think that he shouldn't have refused this girl, when suddenly a knife is launched at him at great speed, which he miraculously dodges. The girl takes out throwing knives, pleasantly surprised that John dodged her throw, after which the system introduces him to his recent companion named Jane. John decides not to fight Jane in the park and retreats from the battlefield at high speed. While running from Jane, he accesses his device, requesting to trade a random item. Jane goes looking for John in the forest, saying that he should have told her earlier about his training. She openly says that she really needs a strong man, and if it turns out that John is stronger than her, then she will really like him. Hearing suspicious sounds, Jane throws a fan of throwing knives into the bushes, but there is no one there. Suddenly, John approaches Jane and throws his jacket at her to distract her attention. Jane instantly cuts her jacket and attacks John, but he intercepts her knife with new gloves. John steps back a little and asks Jane what she will do if he is stronger. After this, he turns on another function of his gloves, which is the ability to use electric shocks. Jane is very surprised at what useful gadget John got for himself, while he asks her whether she was faking her feelings. Jane asks him why he is asking this because everything is already on the surface. Having shed a stingy tear, John says that for playing with a man's feelings, Jane will be punished with 50,000 volts. Jane admits that she is a little impressed with John's skills and gadgets. However, she adds that his toys will be of no use if he can't catch her. Jane disappears into thin air, and John tries to hear by ear where she will launch her next attack. Jane prepares to attack and says that in a game where everyone is risking their lives, she is the main killer. Jane reveals that she grew up as a hitman who never failed a single job and earned herself the alias Licorice, as a flower symbolizing death. John, however, manages to react and intercepts all the knives thrown at him. He grins and throws the knives back, hitting the tree Jane is next to. John says that there is no point in these transfers and asks her if she is going to continue. Jane admits that John really surprises her and rushes into close combat. John and Jane skillfully try to catch each other, making a mistake, but neither of them succeeds. John tries to catch Jane, but she, as if dancing, each time prevents him from carrying out his plan. Having made no progress, Jane jumps back, saying that she's having so much fun with him that she's sorry to kill him. Suddenly, Jane offers John an argument, surprising him with such a sudden change of mood. Jane says that if he wins it, she will give him an apartment worth 2.6 billion won, and if she wins, he will become her slave. Jane says that he can imagine it all as a game and that if he wants, he can give in. Suddenly, Jane notices how John changes in a split second, and a shiver runs through her. The prospect of owning an apartment worth 2.6 billion won causes John to awaken hidden powers within himself. In the blink of an eye, he disappears into thin air and appears right behind Jane. Only by a miracle does Jane manage to dodge his attack, and 50,000 volts go into the ground next to her. John demands that Jane give her apartment to himself, looking at her with an ominous gaze full of desire. For the first time in her life, Jane feels genuine fear of someone and briefly loses her composure. However, quickly gathering her thoughts, she decides to carry out another attack and rushes forward, throwing the knives. Jane admits that she is afraid of what a terrible creature John would be if he were a killer, while he easily brushes aside her knives with his gloves and rushes towards her as well. Suddenly, Jane realizes that John is the man who deserves to win her heart. For the first time in her life, she realizes that she is seeing a person who is much stronger than her, and a slight blush appears on her face. With a happy smile, Jane tells John that she is giving up, to which he replies that such an option does not exist for her. A shock of electricity shoots through Jane's body, causing her to lose consciousness. She wakes up to find herself in her apartment, wondering out loud that she is in her own home. She is met by John, who sarcastically remarks that she is now at his house. Jane says she will transfer ownership to him, but in return she puts a condition on him. John asks Jane what came to her mind this time. Jane says that the only condition for the transfer of property is that they live together. John is surprised by this condition, but Jane reminds that their words were just words and were not certified in any way by documents, adding that she will be able to help him with information about the games, calling this cohabitation a form of partnership. John asks her the reasons why he should trust her, to which she checks the house's rental prices, noticing that they have jumped up again. Instantly changing his face, John extends his hand to the girl, agreeing to her terms. Jane shakes John's hand, looking lovingly into his eyes and asking him if they need to draw up a cohabitation agreement. John does not object, thus beginning a time of strange cohabitation between the assassin and the Special Forces soldier. After some time, John receives a task according to which he must find a high school student named Tobias and obey his orders. John says Tobias loves to write stories about school bullies and their victims. In his stories, which he continues to publish, the victims are the main characters. John speaks confidently about all this because he has now become a victim of this violence. A few minutes earlier, John finds Tobias and his friends disguised as a schoolboy. John decides to play dumb and stumbles in place and falls to the ground, causing his wallet to fall out of his backpack. One of the hooligans picks up John's wallet, asking him how much money is in it and whether he got drunk. Looking at John, Tobias says that he was looking for a new toy, but she found him herself. John mentally rejoices that he managed to find Tobias so easily and continues to act out the image of a nerd and involuntarily lets out a chuckle. The bully gets angry because John is giggling and decides to hit him with all his might to teach him some manners. John continues to pretend to be a weakling and cowardly cowers from the blow, mentally telling himself that he needs to give his best. Having thrown away the money in front of the hooligans, he desperately screams, asking them not to beat him. This scream incredibly frightens the bully, although outwardly he tries not to admit it. One of Tobias's friends says that they are not going to kill him, ordering John to give his number so that they can call him later. John shares his contacts, mentally rejoicing that they think of him as an easy target. Tobias tells his friends that they need to go and they leave, planning to drink with the money. Tobias adds that they need to get to know their new friend better and have a welcoming ceremony. Sometime later, John and the hooligans find themselves in an apartment where the hooligans are drinking and talking. One of Tobias's friends takes a mug with a drink in which several cigarette butts are floating and asks John why he doesn't drink. He advises him to drink every last drop, otherwise he will suffer a sad fate. As he says this, he points to a young guy who is being beaten by Tobias's second friend. The guy faints, and another friend, calling him by name Fred, runs up to him and starts kicking him, scolding him for daring to pass out. John looks at these terrible bullying and beatings, trying to control himself. Taking in his hand a cup of muddy slurry, which he was offered to drink, John splashes it forcefully in the bully's face, saying that his hand trembled from fear. The bully goes berserk, grabbing John by the tie, screaming that he won't live. Tobias interrupts him, telling him not to do nonsense as today is an important day. The bully immediately releases John, saying that he will prepare everything right away. After some time, the hooligans continue to sit in the apartment and hear approaching steps. After some time, a middle-aged man enters the apartment, telling Fred that he is home. The man tries to turn on the light when he suddenly meets the hooligans in front of him, along with John, sitting at a small table on which there is a cake with a candle. The man who is Fred's father assumes that Tobias and his friends are Fred's friends, to which he replies in the affirmative, adding that they came in honor of his birthday. Fred's father regrets not buying a cake for him, to which Tobias assures him that nothing bad happened, because they had a wonderful time with Fred. Fred smiles, confirming what Tobias said and tells his father not to worry. John silently observes the situation, trying to understand why Tobias is putting on this sickening show. Fred's father is glad that his son has such decent friends and shakes Tobias's hand. The deceived man hands Tobias the money, saying that there should be enough here to cover the cost of a cake and something else. Tobias refuses, saying they weren't doing it for the reward, noting that Fred's father earned it through hard work, noting that the man works as a living punching bag. While Tobias is talking to his father, his friend moves closer to Fred and calls out to him. He asks him a question about whether he can punch his father in the face if he gives 10,000 won. Tobias politely says goodbye to Fred's father, saying that it is time for them to leave, but John decides to stay a little longer. John goes out onto the roof and finds Fred sitting on a bench. He comes closer and asks him how he is feeling, saying that he was forced here by these hooligans. Fred advises John to transfer to another school, otherwise Tobias will get to the bottom of his weaknesses and will not stop until John obeys him. John asks Fred what his weakness is, to which he responds that his weakness is family. Fred says that his mother is in the hospital that Tobias's father owns, and thanks to this, she can stay there for free while he and his father save up for the operation. According to Fred, in return for this favor, he must endure all the bullying so that his mother gets back on her feet. John understands why Fred follows Tobias's orders, saying that he will have to do this too, but immediately expresses doubt that he can stand it for much longer. He adds that if Fred always keeps negativity inside himself, he will simply die of anger. He invites Fred to freshen up, adding that he has quite a bit of money. The next morning, John gets ready for school again, thinking of a plan of action, talking to himself. Jake quietly approaches him and asks him if he is worried about something. John gets scared, asking her why she is doing this and what she is doing in his room. Jane reminds John that they are now living together and gives him another loving look. She adds that he can tell her everything if something bothers him, playfully calling him partner. John says that his head hurts a lot and asks her not to mock her. Jane says that judging by his outfit, he is getting ready for school and suggesting ways to kill a student. John says it's an assassination mission, replying that he'll handle the mission himself and checks his phone. John sees a proposal for a meeting from one of his friends, Tobias, whose name is Marty, and decides that this is a great opportunity. Jane tells John that she has prepared breakfast for him and offers him something to eat before leaving, but John loudly refuses and runs away. Jane is surprised by John's strange behavior, jokingly suggesting that he has begun puberty. Meanwhile, in one of the gateways, Marty grabs a girl by the hand and asks her to give her a number to meet. The girl refuses him, and he swings his hand at her, angry at the refusal. Suddenly, a soda can flies into Marty's hand, causing him to let go of the girl in surprise. He turns around, wondering out loud who did this, and spots John happily walking towards him. Marty asks John if he is done living and plans to beat him up for his actions. However, John decides to get back for everything he suffered and delivers a powerful blow to him in the gut. John confronts Marty with a choice in which he either leaves him alone or he does him a favor. John adds that he can hit him again to make him think faster. Marty agrees, saying that he will do whatever John says and asks what he needs to do. John tosses the money to Marty, saying that he should take it and keep everything that happened a secret. According to John, in all other respects, Marty should live as he lived before and do everything naturally. He asks Marty where the rest of the punks are and, having received an answer, orders him to be taken there. After some time, Tobias tells John that it is now his turn. He holds Fred, demanding that John not sting his strength and hit him properly. John stands in the small garage and looks at Fred, mentally saying that Fred was right the last time they spoke. He remembers Fred telling him that Tobias would sooner or later ask John to hit him, telling him not to hesitate because he would take it all. John playfully starts hitting Fred, barely putting any force into his punches. Marty looks on, not believing that John is hitting Fred so weakly. Tobias demands that Marty teach John a lesson, to which Marty begins to hesitate on the spot. Tobias notices Marty's hesitation and tells him that he must obey without question. Marty is nervous, looking in horror at John, who is trying to tell him something. Marty reads John's lips, telling him to behave as usual. Marty, in desperation, punches John in the face, frightened that he dared to take such a step. John begins to cry theatrically, saying that Marty gave him the condition that John must give him the money while Tobias is not around, and he will leave him alone. According to John, Marty called Tobias mediocrity and worthless, telling John not to worry. John, shedding tears, calls Marty a dishonest liar and asks him to return his money. Stuffing his hands into Marty's pockets, John jerks out piles of money, scattering them on the floor. Tobias easily falls for John's lies and asks Marty why he decided to spend all this money without his participation. Marty tries to justify himself, but Tobias is not even going to listen to him and approaches him, asking him if he looks like a clown. After some time, having beaten Marty half to death, Tobias says that his mood is ruined and asks his remaining friend to clean up the place before leaving. The bully is surprised that Marty has always acted so arrogantly and suggests that he couldn't get enough of his wealth. The bully notices that John is collecting all his money back and asks him if he really took all of Marty's money. He adds that he can take them away from him and guard him much better, saying that he has a better chance against Tobias. John says he can give him all the money up front, adding that he'll give him another $5 million after he's done with his business. In return, John decides to ask the bully for a small favor. Sometime later, John and Fred are sitting on a bench as a couple, taking a break from their adventures. John hands Fred his bag, who asks him what's in it. John replies without a second thought that the bag contains money for his mother's treatment. Fred says that he doesn't know where John got so much money, adding that they barely know each other, so his behavior seems strange. John says that he definitely won't be able to tell everything, but the only thing he can say is that he just has a lot of money. John adds that he admires Fred for hanging on and surviving all this time, being alone and lost without any support. John says he wants to show Fred that there is more to the world than just darkness, telling him to spend the money to transfer his mother to another hospital and get decent treatment. Tears begin to fall from Fred's eyes, and John says he wants to hear his story. 2 days later, Tobias's henchman enters the gym where Fred's father once worked. John meets him, peeking out from behind a punching bag, happy that he has finally arrived. John tells the bully that he wanted to ask him to spar, adding that he will give him 5 million won if he wins. The bully is surprised by these conditions, asking John if he is really going to pay him for winning. John confirms this, adding that Fred will be his opponent. The bully bursts out laughing, saying that Fred is their punching bag, but agrees. He approaches Fred and says that they thought he was dead somewhere because he wasn't answering their calls, adding that he didn't expect Fred to lay low here and learn how to fight suckers. The bully says he has no reason not to fight and hopes to get punched in the face. The participants enter the ring, and Fred asks John if everything will be all right, to which he gives a calm affirmative answer. The bully mentally remembers that he heard information from Fred that his father is in charge of this hall, but from his point of view, a person working as a punching bag will not do anything to him. The bully charges, raising his hand to strike, saying that he's going to break Fred's nose. However, neither this nor the dozen following attacks can even touch Fred, who dodges them with incredible ease. John watches the fight, cheerfully thinking that this simpleton has no idea why things have changed so much in 2 days. From John's point of view, Fred was strong from the start, and the constant beatings only strengthened his body. John adds that he noticed the bursting bags in his father's gym, which told him that Fred had been holding back all along. John mentally travels back in time a couple of days to the moment when Fred tells him that he used to participate in fights, but after beating a robber too much, he began to fear his strength. Fred realized that his hands could kill someone, and after that he stopped practicing. Then John asked if Fred had any injuries that he would like to get rid of. Fred doesn't understand what John is getting at and asks him how this is possible. John puts on his instructor's cap and tells him that from now on, he only responds with a phrase exactly to his words. Thanks to army brainwashing and hellish training, John forces Fred to overcome his fear. In just a few grueling sessions, John destroys Fred's complexes, which no longer hinder his movements. Meanwhile, at the moment, Fred delivers a powerful blow to the exhausted bully, knocking him out. Fred looks at his defeated opponent, indifferently observing his triumph. He admits to John that from now on he wants to return to boxing. The scene is interrupted by the sudden appearance of Tobias, who says that he missed all the fun. Tobias says that he hasn't been here for a long time, noting that this place is still disgusting to him. He adds that he heard that Fred's mother is moving to another hospital and regrets that now he will not be able to abuse him. Tobias's monologue is interrupted by Fred, telling him to shut his mouth and get into the ring. He adds that it's time to end their bad relationship. Tobias enters the ring, and Fred remembers that they were once childhood friends. However, later, due to similar aspirations, they became enemies who sought to surpass each other. However, ultimately, because Tobias could not surpass Fred, their paths finally parted. Tobias started to feel like Fred was looking down on him, and he started freaking out about it. Despite Fred's assurances that he did not consider Tobias inferior to him, their relationship did not improve. Ultimately, Tobias left the room and went down a slippery slope. As a former boxer, Tobias excelled in street fights, emerging victorious. It was there that he found those two friends who were impressed by his fighting skills. That's when Tobias heard that Fred had given up boxing due to a critical incident. It turns out that Fred was on trial for overprotection because of that burglar incident, and that's when his mother ended up in the hospital, so his father had to close the court. Then Tobias realized that Fred's failures brought him undisguised happiness. Tobias rushes at Fred, screaming that he should lie on the floor and writhe in pain. Fred stoically endures all of Tobias's insults and blocks every blow. Fred remembers the past again, transporting himself to the moment when he met Tobias again. Tobias said that his father could cover the entire cost of Fred's mother's treatment. In return, Tobias demands that Fred be his toy and obey his orders flawlessly. In response to Fred's astonishment, Tobias says that he will do a little testing, and if Fred disobeys him, his mother will not receive free treatment. After these words, Tobias goes into the crowd, finding Fred's father there, working as a live pair. He turns to Fred and hands the money to his father. After that, he begins, without holding back, to beat him in front of Fred. Fred could not move, consoling himself with words about his mother's good. And then his father noticed him. He asks Fred if he's surprised his father is doing something like this. His father encouraged Fred not to be upset, saying that these children would never be able to hit him hard. With one of his blows, Tobias manages to break through Fred's defenses and hit him on the cheek. However, realizing that he will no longer be a miserable coward, Fred rushes forward, dodging Tobias's next blow. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Fred lands a serious blow to Tobias's body, causing him to stagger back and fall to his knee. Fred moves closer to Tobias and tells him to get up and fight on. Despite his simmering rage, Tobias fails to successfully attack Fred and continues to be hit. Fred again demands that Tobias stand up and says that he will spare his face this time. Tobias tells Fred that he recognizes that arrogant look that he hates the most. Tobias takes off his gloves and takes out a switchblade, saying that he will make him quit boxing forever. Fred begins to look in surprise towards Tobias, and he asks him if he was scared. However, John, walking closer and closer to Tobias, tells him that he has crossed the line. Tobias turns around and throws a swinging punch, but John easily dodges it. He snatches the knife from Tobias's hands, telling him that he almost hit him. When Tobias demands that he return the knife, John takes off his false teeth, telling him that he is not even a botanist. He advances on Tobias, saying that he should fight him too. After some time, there is no living space left of Tobias, and he tearfully begs for mercy. John tells him that he warned him not to cross the line, noting that because of this he did not hold back. John receives a notification that due to a failed mission, he will be given a random punishment. Fred asks John in surprise who he is, putting him into a slight stupor. However, without waiting for an answer, he assumes that John is a professional who will not fight ordinary people. Fred says that he still wants to thank John for everything he did, because everything that happened today was thanks to him. John says he did this because he had help when he was young, adding that if Fred really wanted to, he could repay him when he succeeded. John mentally concludes that money is determined by the owner who owns it, adding that for some, it is an opportunity to present themselves above others, and for others, it is an opportunity to start a new life. Meanwhile, the system imposes a punishment on John, as a result of which a real hunt is announced for him.